Michelle Alexander, The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. In the book, The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness, author Michelle Alexander delves into the shocking reality of racial prejudice in the U.S. criminal justice system, particularly concerning the war on drugs. Despite the belief that we live in a post-racial society, the data shows that African Americans and Latinos are disproportionately imprisoned for drug offenses, even as drug use remains consistent across race demographics. This comprehensive summary will explore the consequences of racially biased mass incarcerations, their historical roots, and the challenges former inmates face upon re-entry into society, highlighting the complex interplay of race, policy, and law enforcement.
The Hidden Agenda. The American government imposed a war on drugs campaign that disproportionately incarcerated people of color. This initiative was spearheaded by the Reagan administration upon the discovery of crack cocaine in black neighborhoods. Initially, it was perceived skeptical even by members of Reagan's party. However, propaganda efforts were employed to spread awareness about the new crack problem, branding black people as crack whores and crack babies in the media. The war on drugs enforcement increased and became generously financed, which led to more people of color incarcerated in U.S. prisons. The racial bias of the American justice system. The U.S. incarcerates its minorities at a higher rate than any other country in the world, including highly repressive regimes. The majority of people serving time in U.S. prisons are black or Latino, and primarily on drug-related offenses. However, research has shown that people of all races use and sell drugs at a similar rate. In fact, young white people are more involved in drug crimes than any other race. Despite this, the black and Latino populations continue to be targeted and incarcerated. The U.S. crime rate has not increased, questioning the reasoning behind the disproportionate incarceration rates, and suggesting racial bias in the American justice system. The U.S. justice system, a dysfunctional model. Punitive drug-related sentencing standards, excessive police power, and lack of oversight have perpetuated the dysfunctions of the U.S. justice system. In this system, plea bargaining has become a powerful incentive for individuals who cannot afford legal representation to plead guilty, even if they are innocent. The U.S. justice system has failed to address injustices that emerge from its punitive drug-related sentencing standards, excessive police power, and lack of oversight. Drug-related crimes in the United States attract severe punishment, such as a mandatory minimum sentence of 5 to 10 years in prison for first-time drug offenders. Such length of sentences for drug violations are non-existent in any other developed country. In 1982, an adult found guilty of possessing and intending to sell marijuana was sentenced to 40 years imprisonment, which was later upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court. Furthermore, law enforcement is empowered with vast authority and little oversight. Police officers have the right to stop and search any person without any fundamental reason. Most often, the cases are resolved through plea bargaining, where an individual pleads guilty for a lessened sentence instead of going to trial. The U.S. justice system is now plagued with innocent people pleading guilty, out of panic, or just in the hope of receiving a lenient sentence. The system does not provide equal opportunities for those without financial resources, enforcing the tendency of disadvantaged individuals to plead guilty. Unconscious racial bias in law enforcement. Despite the belief that U.S. law enforcement is impartial, research proves that there is a high likelihood of unconscious racial bias among individuals, including those in law enforcement. This bias produces racially biased outcomes, especially in drug law enforcement. As drug crimes don't have a victim, police officers need to be proactive, stopping and searching people. Given the historical context of sensationalist media coverage and the early boom in crack use in poor neighborhoods, black people are commonly targeted and profiled by law enforcement. The vicious cycle of discrimination. Released inmates face highly discriminatory regulations leading to a vicious cycle of reoffending. The criminal justice and drug law enforcement systems in the United States are racially biased, resulting in a large number of Black Americans being wrongly convicted and imprisoned for minor drug offenses like possession. However, the injustice does not end there. Upon release, former inmates face numerous discriminatory regulations. Many of them are denied public housing and participation in federal food stamp programs, and private landlords and employers have the freedom to discriminate against them. Job applications and rental agreements require them to disclose their felony convictions, making it difficult for them to reintegrate with society. Felons are even denied the right to vote, and those on parole or probation are heavily monitored and searched at any time. Exclusionary legal policies make it nearly impossible for them to successfully re-enter society, resulting in a vicious cycle of re-offending due to a lack of viable options to survive. The Bureau of Justice Statistics conducted a study that found that approximately 68% of released prisoners are arrested again within 3 years, primarily for minor crimes such as drug or property offenses. This situation emphasizes the urgent need for reform in the criminal justice and drug law enforcement system's racially biased structures. The solution for successful reintegration of former inmates lies in reforms in the social and economic sectors such as providing better access to housing, education, employment, and other essential services. Repression, Oppression, and Political Gain. The book discusses how the oppression of Black Americans has created a new undercaste, which white elites have utilized to exploit anxieties and racial resentments of working-class whites and gain political power. The systematic oppression is similar to the eras of institutionalized slavery and Jim Crow laws, leading to confusion and short periods of freedom. The collapse of previous systems of oppression led to the quest for new means of social controls to re-establish racial hierarchy. This book raises questions on who benefits from such repressive policies, and the reason for their recurrence. Politicians use the dangerous other, African Americans, to distract voters from other pressing political issues. The book highlights the war on drugs as another system of repression established to appeal to poor white voters. The author proposes the need for change from this appalling state of affairs. Tackling racial biases in mass incarceration. Systematic and racially biased mass incarceration presents a complex issue in the U.S. To address this, we need to talk frankly about race and dismantle unconscious racial biases. Colorblindness, although well-intentioned, can impede progress. Research shows that many white people are uncomfortable talking about race, which prevents open discussion and understanding. Additionally, the Black community needs to shift the conversation towards mass incarceration and social oppression, away from higher-profile policies like affirmative action. Raising awareness and consciousness is needed to make a positive change. While there is no quick solution, it's important to address the issue to prevent racial resentment from being exploited by politicians.
The insights offered in The New Jim Crow provide a sobering view of the systemic issues that perpetuate racial injustice in the U.S. justice system. These disparities tie back to political exploitation, the media's portrayal of drug-related crimes, and inadequate discussions around race. To challenge the destructive outcomes of mass incarceration, we must address the deeply entrenched biases in our society and engage in open, honest conversations about race. By critically examining these topics, readers can better understand the scope of mass incarceration's impact on communities of color in the United States, and recognize the urgent need for change.